on to our main discussion this evening. There's breaking news. The Mumbai police has announced that it has arrested Niraj Desai, the structural auditor of the collapsed footover bridge in the city. The arrest comes 4 days after the footover bridge collapsed, claiming the lives of 6 people and injuring 30 others. The police say they've arrested Niraj, who is the person who audited the bridge. The police has also altered the charges against Niraj from 3 to 3042, which is culpable homicide, not amounting to murder. This is what the police had to say.
In the initial investigation, it came into our light that the structural audit and the negligence on the part of various officials are the persons who are expert in this field, and they have a knowledge that such an act, such a negligent act can cause damage to the life of people. So we have applied section 304 part 2 instead of 304A, which means culpable homicide not amounting to murder. In our initial investigation, based on facts, we have taken in our custody Niraj Desai, who was structural auditor of this particular bridge, and we are investigating his role into this offence further. This investigation is being monitored on a daily basis from all the senior officers. CP Mumbai is taking daily review about this offence, as well as Joint CP Law and Order and Additional CP South Region. We are conducting a professional and independent investigation, and we ensure citizens that a proper charge sheet would be filed before court of law.
So Niraj Desai is from Desai firm, or he is some official from the BMC?
No, he is owner of the Desai firm. Thank you.
Abhishek, sir, you are also probing roles of BMC officers in this. Can you please elaborate their roles?
So, in our investigation till now, we have recorded statements of few of the BMC officers about the systems for maintenance of bridges, and after perusing their role, necessary legal action would be taken in this particular case.
My colleague Santhya Gora is standing by. She's been tracking this entire process. Santhya, the investigation obviously has now brought in the vendor, the contractor who had actually audited the bridge. But what about those within the BMC, the engineers within the BMC who've been suspended? Have they been named in the FIR? And will anybody in government be held accountable?
This is the first name which is added in the FIR, and it is of the owner of structural audit firm, the firm which did the structural audit of the bridge. Now, as far as the BMC officials are concerned, the chief engineer of Bridges Department, Sanjay Darade, his statement was taken by Mumbai police, but Mumbai police has made it very clear that as of now they do not suspect him of anything. The reason they took his statement was to understand how the functioning inside BMC as far as the construction, repair and audit system of the bridges is concerned. Apart from that, Faye, out of those 5 people who are suspended, one engineer his statement is being taken by Mumbai police. As of now, his statement is being taken on what lines, and is Mumbai police planning to add his name also in the FIR? That is something Mumbai police is yet to come to a conclusion to. But as of now, Niraj Desai will be produced in the court tomorrow, and Mumbai police will take his remand for further interrogation and investigation.
Many thanks for bringing us that update, my colleague Santhya, who's been tracking that case very closely, and we will keep a very close eye on this case, because it's not just the contractor who had that contract that messed up, but those within the BMC who weren't doing their job that costed us 6 more lives, other than the 4 other incidents we've had in the last 3 years in the city that have claimed lives of innocent citizens. But moving on to the conversation that we're having now. India's missing data. We've brought this up several times on the channel. The fact that for the last several years, the government just hasn't released data for various reasons. But if we take a look at the reports that are in fact missing, is the government withholding statistics that are inconvenient in the run-up to an election? Take a look.
On the debate tonight, the mystery of India's missing data. India's jobs data last submitted in 2011-2012. India's crime data last made public in 2016. India's accidents and suicide data once again made public 3 years back in 2016. Farmer suicide data reported last in 2016. The list only grows longer. With no proper statistics, India is concerned. On Friday, 15th March, as many as 108 top economists and social scientists from across the world issued a joint statement raising concerns over statistical data coming out of India. They appealed to all professional economists, statisticians, and independent researchers to come together to raise their voice against this.
There is a concern that the quality of economic statistics have deteriorated in last 4 or 5 years, and there seems to be interference in the release of the data.
It's genuinely an effort by the economists to say that the data is sacrosanct. I mean, that is something which should not be interfered with.
Mirror now asks, when will the government disclose crucial and up-to-date data? Is the government withholding data for electoral gains? Isn't the government hurting India's credibility by withholding this data? Let's debate.
Well, it's not just the data on jobs that have been missing. Socioeconomic caste census is missing. The NCRB data, like we pointed out on the channel, specifically to do with farmer suicides, has been missing since demonetisation. We don't know how many farmers have committed suicide in this country. Prison statistics released by the NCRB has not been released since 2015. There's a whole list, in fact. They say data doesn't lie. If you can't get it to lie, then you just don't release it. On the show right now, PC Mohan, former chairperson of the NSC, who quit his job because he believed the data was not being taken seriously. Very senior statistician. Mr. Mohan, do you agree, first of all, with the letter that was put out by the 108 economists and statisticians saying we modify the data in India and we will lose credibility globally?
Yes, I do agree. I stated that the letter is a very timely and very relevant to the current situation, because overall we have a feeling that there has been some efforts to see that some uncomfortable data are not released in public domain or are delayed. So this feeling is one of the reasons why these economists have come forward and raised their voice, which I think is a very appropriate thing to do.
Well, Mr. Mohan, the question that I do want to ask you is about GDP and the fact that the GDP calculation has been modified for, and I won't make it too complicated for our audience, but basically, since the modification of the kind of calculation, it shows that India grew phenomenally in the last 4 years, including in the year during demonetisation, where we recorded the highest growth in a decade. Do you have reason to believe, given your experience, that our GDP data is not reliable?
I will not fully agree with that. See, the GDP data comes out of with a very elaborate kind of an exercise. But yes, I agree that it should also be reflecting the situation and it should be convincing to the public at large that it is the responsibility of the CSO and the statisticians to offer explanations if there are doubts raised. All official statisticians' fundamental job is to ensure that they clarify the points raised. So far, unfortunately, the CSO or the official statistical system has not issued any clarifications on the point, especially like you said, the GDP growth during the year of demonetization, or sometimes the kind of the inconsistencies in the back series. Nobody has come forward and clarified it. That is the unfortunate part of it. But there are technical agency experts behind this, who looks into this methodology. So I will not totally agree that the methodology has been totally tampered or anything like that. But what is important is to be more transparent and come out and give convincing answers to the question being raised.
Yes, and Mr. Mohan, we've seen the Niti Aayog, which is a politically appointed body, get increasingly involved, first with the GDP data that it took out, or it made the CSO take those numbers down from its website. Then they got involved with the jobs data. Do you believe the Niti Aayog has the expertise to deal with national level data?
see, this point was mentioned by me earlier. The Planning Commission used to have a large core of statistical people in that. But when the Planning Commission was disbanded and the Niti Aayog came into being, all the statistical positions have been transferred back to the Ministry of Statistics, and they have experts. But I'm not sure they have official statisticians in their among them. They have experts, I know, but not the official statisticians. That is to my knowledge. All the statistical service officers have been withdrawn from that planning commission that the Niti Aayog came into being. I am not sure about the competence of the Niti Aayog, but in any case, we have a separate mechanism for overseeing the official statistics production, which is the National Statistical Commission. Now, CSO and the Commission, they are the two involved parties. The Niti Aayog I mentioned earlier also have no business to enter into the picture. They can interpret, they can comment on the results, comment on the data once the data is outside in the public domain, but not getting involved and take decisions about what to publish and what not to publish.
And last question, Mr. Mohan, obviously going into the election at this point, what caution would you offer to the citizens of India as far as this national level data that's being released by the government or withheld by the government is concerned? Should we take this information with a pinch of salt or be slightly skeptic about it?
Well, we have to strengthen the mechanisms. Currently, there is no National Statistical Commission. It was without a chairman for almost close to 7-8 months. And 2 members' posts are also vacant for the same period. So this institutional mechanism which we have built up over the years, instead of them going from bad to worse, we need to strengthen them and to ensure that these are established. And it is not just relating to these two kinds of data. You also mentioned large number of data sets that have not been released by the government. I can add to that, including the population census, some of the tables of the population census relating to migration, these are yet to come out. And you remember the population census was done in 2011. Now we are in 2019 and planning for the next census. There are a large number of results of that census yet to come out. So most of the agencies have to be more accountable in public, and that is possible if you have a strong supervisory mechanism headed by professional people. And that has to come from the government, has to be serious about that. That is very relevant. But the election time issue, I don't want to go into issue because
that's fair enough. I respect that. PC Mohan, former chairman of the NSC, many thanks for giving us your time here on Mirror Now and having this conversation with us. I'm opening this up now to my entire panel. On the conversation with me, Vivek Reddy for the BJP. Ritika Khera is the Associate Professor, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. R. Ramakumar is an economist with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Both of them have signed this letter. Ashutosh, Senior Journalist. Professor Arun Kumar, Chair Professor of the Institute of Social Sciences. We also have with us Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary. I welcome all of you to this conversation and I thank you for your time. I will start with Ritika Khera. It's always lovely to have a woman's voice on matters like this. Ritika, first of all, thank you for giving us your time. Professor Khera, why did you sign this letter? Why do you believe that right now India deserves to be cautioned about national statistics?
So, data concerns as far as us economists are concerned are something we quibble with the government, successive governments going back to 1999-2000. But what's happened in the past few years is that, for instance, the 2 data points that we are concerned about in this letter, jobs and the GDP series, what's happened is that those who work with these data, they've been writing academic papers, they've been writing perhaps even op-eds, raising their concerns and asking questions, but no clarifications have been forthcoming from the government. So initially it was really these constant revision of the methodology with respect to the GDP, the change of base in in a way that's not been done before. I mean, the change of base is a normal practice, but the way it's been done was, there were some concerns about that. But because there was no answer from the government, and then after that, what happened with the jobs data, it had to be leaked. And that actually was a cause for alarm as well, that, if you don't speak up now, it's just going to spread further. And as you've already said, there are other data, important data that are not being released by the government. So it seemed like, if they're not going to listen in one way, then you have to try another way to be heard. and that was the main point of this letter. If I may add two very quick points which were not in the letter. One, of course, I've already mentioned that it's not just these two data series that are problematic. There are others which you mentioned, the NCRB data, and Mr. Mohanan mentioned the census data that's been very delayed. The last point is that actually there's a very serious crisis, I think, of trained and skilled staff within these organizations. I visited the Labour Bureau headquarters in Shimla a few years ago, and that's the main point of collection for all our price data. And the person there was complaining bitterly about how there was no staff. In fact, a lot of the offices were empty.
Yes.
And he says basically there's a lot of learning on the job, and if you have a long gap of lack of appointments, then that also makes the quality of the data suffer. So there's actually a whole range of issues that need to be discussed, but the people who initiated this letter actually work with the GDP series, so really the focus was on that.
Professor Ramkumar, tell us this. Do you believe that the government has adequately responded to the issues or to the concerns that were raised by all of these economists, and yourself included?
Not at all, not at all. In fact, what I see today evening is that the statement by 108 economists has been responded to by the statement of 131 chartered accountants.
Yes.
Now, I wonder why the government could not even get at least 5 or 10 economists to respond to the letter by 108 economists. It shows the shallowness of the intellect in the official establishment.
You've also written extensively on demonetisation. Do you believe that this government is currently suffering from a bankruptcy of economists or people to advise them in these matters?
Let me just say this, that the demonetisation of 2016 was the creation of one chartered accountant. I think if 131 chartered accountants get together, God save India.
Well, there must obviously be a difference between a chartered accountant and economist through very specific skills. But opening this up also to Ashutosh. Ashutosh, I can see you smiling. There's obviously, at the end of the day, what audiences must know is that national data is important for every single government decision. It is not about winning or losing elections. Government decisions are based on this data. And if we don't have the data, I don't know how the government has been making decisions for the last 2 years. Ashutosh.
See, if the 108 eminent economists, if they are writing and they are raising concerns about the data, then it has to be taken very, very seriously. And I think if 108 economists are countered by a chartered accountant, then you can imagine. I think one of the guest panelists has said it very well, that one chartered accountant has created so much mayhem. 148, God only can save this country. There are two very quick points. One point is, it is not only about the data manipulation, but there is also data suppression. Every time, I remember correctly that we all were told that 2004 to 2011-13, the Indian economy has grown at the rate of 8+. But suddenly you are told that in 2014 to 2019, Indian economy has done much better than what Manmohan Singh government has, Indian economy has done during Manmohan Singh. I am not here to believe that. Because today the data do not support whatever has been claimed made by the government. There is a serious crisis. And then if you ask the data about the farmer suicide, you are told no, you can't get it. If you ask the data about the unemployment, you are told you can't get it. You ask the CAG report, which should be online, about the defense procurement, you are supposed to be told no, you can't get it. Now the issue is what is there for the government to hide. And if NSO data is countered by Niti Aayog, which is not its main domain. Niti Aayog's job is to advise government on the issues of policies and others, not to crunch data. And if somebody from the Niti Aayog is coming and telling us that they are giving some argument, then obviously there is something much deeper than what we assume.
Let's allow Vivek Reddy to respond to this. Vivek Reddy, where is the data and why is the government not releasing data? Isn't this extremely worrying and embarrassing when 108 economists from across the world caution us that if we continue to mess up like this, we will lose our reputation globally?
I think there is no occasion for us to lose our reputation globally. India is the fastest growing economy in the world, as confirmed by World Bank, and nobody can deny that. India has also jumped from the 9th largest economy in the world to the 6th largest economy in the world in the past 4 years, from 2014
Vivek Reddy,
the past
answer the
4.5
question
years.
I'm asking.
And that is a major achievement. Data. And this year we will be beating Britain, which ruled us. I know.
Vivek Reddy, Vivek Reddy,
this is how.
I'm asking you a question. No. Don't. This is not an election campaign.
My question
I'm asking you a question about the data. Where is the data?
Let me tell you. My question is, the earlier panelists, the earlier panelists took a very escapist route by saying it is given by chartered accountants. Today, 131 chartered accountants have countered every point raised by these 108 economists.
How can chartered accountants counter points raised by economists?
That look here, there has been
economists
GDP
need to be countered by other economists, Mr. Reddy.
Let us just understand what
can chartered accountants come to court and counter you?
They're
two different professions. Chartered accountants file income taxes.
Don't go by the branding that CAs have done. What is the content?
I go by college education, obviously something that this government does not use.
Look at that. The content reverts every point that they have raised.
But it's not valid because they are not economists.
Complete Faye. I think you have to give me a fair chance to complete what I'm saying. Well, that can't be a reason to put them off. The chartered accountants are saying that look here, the points that you have raised are that there is revised GDP rates. The chartered accountants have busted this lie, this falsity. They have said, look here, there are revisions that are made every year, every other time, and this revision is because of the United Nations regime. Under 2008, there was a new regime adopted by the United Nations on the system of accounting under various nations, under the national system of accounting.
All right, I'll allow the economists to rebut.
The process was initiated.
Professor Ramkumar,
the revision process of GDP was initiated under the earlier UPA. Look at the facts that they are giving. And why are these people?
This is not a matter of this political party or that political party.
Lies.
No, 1 second. I just Vivek Reddy, first of all, let me just stop you for a second. I'm going to stop you for a second. Vivek Reddy, take a deep breath. I'm going to stop you for a second because I just want to remind our audience about something very important. India is a democracy. And when India is a democracy, it belongs to each and every one of us, and we all have a free right to raise questions and concerns about the country. At no point are you allowed to say, why are these people raising false concerns, because it is their right as citizens of this country to ask questions. Rebuttal from Professor.
The question is not about this government or that government. Over the period of many governments in the past also, letters have been signed by social scientists and economists rebutting different issues. If you look at the National Food Security Act, NRAGS, Right to Information, letters have been sent by all kinds of social scientists to earlier governments also. The problem here is the GDP data that has been released in 2015 shows some peculiar kinds of trends. Economists usually understand economic growth to be accompanied by a set of accompanying factors. For example, if you look at your savings rate, it has fallen from 34% to around 30%.
Yes.
If you look at your investment rate, it has fallen from 39% to 32%.
Yes.
If you look at your exports of goods and services, a share of your GDP, it has fallen from 24% to 19%. However, your GDP appears to have risen from 5.5% to 7.2% in terms of growth.
Every single piece of jobs data has pointed to degrowth and not in any way to any sort.
In fact, if you take bank credit growth, it's under many decades. For many decades, you haven't had a fall like this. So economists call this a smell test, in the sense that does your GDP growth come accompanied with a set of other growth indicators as well?
So
it doesn't.
Just to change this into layman's word, this GDP is like the weather, right? You can't tell me it is summer when it is pouring rain outside, because as a citizen I can walk out of my house and there are various indications to tell me that it's actually the monsoon season, and so you can release a report saying that it is summer season, but there are various ways in which you can actually test that it's not summer.
Sure.
And each of us will actually experience this in our lives every day.
It is a very similar thing. Yes. The smell test is very similar to that. So no indicator of the economy is showing that GDP growth could grow at that rapid pace. Comes the employment report. The employment report shows that data change, which is actually in corroboration with other indicators like savings, investment, and so on, because unemployment has risen to a 45-year-old high. But that report is not released. Everything else is.
So, all right. So I also have Achay Dua and Professor Arun Kumar. I'll give you both the opportunities to make opening statements. I see your hand up, Professor Kumar. But Mr. Achay Dua first, you had a rebuttal. Go ahead. What is your rebuttal?
I think the main issue before us is not the very fact that 108 economists, statisticians, and other social scientists have the memorandum which they have given today by way of a press release. But over time, we have the issue of credibility of data pertaining to the economy, pertaining to certain social factors in the economy, as well as the people who are now being involved in, I would call it, redacting of data, which has been work on which has been done by people who have traditionally done it and who have developed a forte in collecting and compiling that data. The very credibility of central statistics or statistical organization, which works at an arm's distance from the government, including the finance ministry, was something which was said as late as 2016 by the current finance minister when he was asked by it. The National Statistical Commission, which came to be set up a little earlier under the then Professor Suresh Tendulkar in 2011-12, I think, was precisely to make sure that there is a significant difference between the government which uses the data, which makes policy measures, which makes programs based on it, and the people who collect the data. If we mix up the two, which is what we seem to be happening or drifting towards, making it cause, that Niti Aayog we have involved in and given it a virtually veto position. For instance, in the employment data, the National Statistical Commission earlier had a member of the Planning Commission as its ex officio member, and now Niti Aayog, very fine, because the requirement of the way you want the data to be presented could come from the user on how the data can be made more user-friendly. But that does not give or did not give any vetoing power of our report otherwise prepared by the National Statistical Commission to one member of the Niti Aayog, as seems to have been currently taken over, saying, right, all right, we have your report, but I don't agree with it, so I'll take it to my masters in the Niti Aayog, and thereafter the data would be released. That's something which cannot by happen. Any stretch of imagination, be accepted by the intellectual community, by the users of the data, policymakers themselves, because the credibility is at doubt because there is a conflict of interest.
Yes, in fact, absolutely. Forgive me for interrupting you, Mr. Dua, but I'm running out of time and I want to bring in Professor Kumar, the Chair Professor of the Indian Institute of Social Sciences. Professor Kumar, you've had your hand up. I'll ask you a straightforward question. Is India's national data right now credible? Do you trust it?
Well, you know, the problem, Faye, is that data has been routinely manipulated. You know, for instance, the budget data is routinely manipulated where you show a lower fiscal deficit, you show higher revenues and higher expenditures. But what has happened now is an abnormal kind of manipulation that is taking place. And what is the abnormality? We must understand that. The abnormality is that where the data is not convenient, it is now being said we don't have data at all. For instance, on employment, the government has said we don't have data. You know, now the problem is if you don't have employment data, especially of the unorganized sector, then how do you measure the unorganized sector's contribution to GDP? Because that's a crucial data point. So therefore, when you say that, that means you don't have even GDP data. And if GDP data is not there, then how do you claim it's 7% rate of growth in the economy? The other is that all data is based on certain assumptions, you know, and these assumptions can be tweaked. Like, for instance, in the data series for GDP, the assumptions have been tweaked to show that the NDA time, the rate of growth is higher than what it was during the UPA period. So usually GDP is re-estimated based on the change in the base year. That's normal. But the assumptions that are made, they have to be gone through with. You know, what is happening is that suddenly the Niti Aayog or some other department of the government says that we are going to withhold the data and we are going to revise it. But every time there's a revision, we know that it has to go through some commission or a committee which then approves that methodology. You can't do that arbitrarily so that it suits you. So I think what's happening is that the manipulation is taking place in a very large level, and this manipulation is not only in employment but also in GDP, and also in, as you said, the crime bureau, also in the case of agriculture and the suicides that are taking place in agriculture. So in other words, the manipulation of data today has gone to one step higher than what it has been earlier. And I think that's what the economists are agitated about. And that's what brings down the credibility of the data of the Indian economy.
Yes.
And that then impacts our international reputation. It also means policy making becomes more difficult,
yes,
because policy making requires data. Now the question is, what is the data government is using for making its policy? If it says it doesn't have employment data, and then it says we have to create so many crore jobs, it said that Mudra loans have created 3 crore jobs, but now the Mudra data on employment is being withheld because probably it's not showing that. And all the experts were saying that Mudra could never have created 3 crore jobs, because after all, the average loan was only about 45,000 rupees, whereas the average investment in a micro unit is about 2.5 lakhs. So therefore, one job cannot be created with just 45,000 rupees of loan. And that's what probably the data is showing, and that's why it's being withheld. So the question is of government's policy making becoming a problem, and what's happening is government had claimed too much. Government was claiming too much, and the data is not showing that, and that's why the government is withdrawing this at the moment, or withholding the data.
Fair enough. I see Professor Ritika Khera has her hand up. She's had her hand up for a while. I want to give her an opportunity to come in. Yes, Vivek Reddy. Just before that, Professor Khera, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about, why chartered accountants should or should not intervene in this debate. And I think it's very fair for them to think about this issue and to respond. But the problem with that response is that it's misrepresenting our concerns. So they seem to be saying that we have an objection to the change in base. And actually we're saying that's not the problem at all. The problem that we are raising is something else. So if they were responding to our concerns and they had intervened, it would have been perfectly fine. The other strain in the letter is to raise questions about us being politically motivated. And again, I think that's a good thing, that people should be suspicious and should ask questions. I would say that the people should also be equally suspicious of government claims. But just on that one point, let me say that, a similar problem arose with the previous government with the National Family Health Survey data. Because the previous rounds had shown hardly any improvement, and the government at that time, UPA2, got a lot of flack for it. What did they do? They completely they tried to disband the National Family Health Survey 4th round. But because there was a lot of pressure from a lot of us writing in the newspapers, etc., ultimately they were forced to implement that survey. So in that time, some pressure worked. In this time, like I said, Professor Nagaraj has been writing consistently. For years he's been writing, not just in this government's term, but even in the previous government's term. But when your inputs are not being taken, when they're given in good faith and they're not taken on board, then we feel that we were, well within our rights to raise these issues in the manner that we did. If there's just one more minute I can take, one dangerous fallout of this, and some people have highlighted it, but there's one particular aspect, which is that the government is telling us, don't look at NSS, which has been the most reliable source, look at Uber and Ola employment. They're saying don't look at NSS or the National Family Health Survey for sanitation, look at a survey done by Quality Control Council of India. They're not really well placed to do this. So, data is a public good. That was the first sentence of our letter, and there is a reason why it should be undertaken by the government. The government needs to be kept a watch on, and a lot of us have done it in the past, not just with this government, but previous governments going back to 99, 2000, for some of us. So I feel people should, listen to the concerns that we are raising and not waste time on just mudslinging or casting aspersions, but look at the content of the concerns.
Well, let's actually stick with the concerns. Vivek Reddy of the BJP wants to respond. Vivek Reddy, why is it that since demonetisation, the numbers on the farmer suicides in India have not been released?
Well, Faye, let me just clear up what others have said, because there are one or two points that I wanted to intervene. First of all, the claim, I will come back to your question also. First of all, regarding data on jobs and other data, India is a vast country, and the earlier methodologies of collecting data were flawed. So therefore, the government moved to a different architecture. This was one.
No, that's not
But
correct,
the
Vivek
Economist,
Reddy, I'm sorry.
I would have really placed some reliance on the letter of the Economist. No, I would have really placed some concern or some, given some credibility to the letter of these economists if they had addressed certain criterias or certain standards that have been coming out in the past few months and certain statistics of the World Bank. Unfortunately, they suppressed that data and set up an alternative story. And this the nation must know. Therefore, the chartered accountants came up and they raised these issues. I'll ask these
Okay, so Vivek Reddy, out of curiosity, because I know that everybody watching at home is going to ask this question. I'm sorry, why did the government get not one or two, but 131 chartered accountants? Couldn't you find a single economist?
You have to be fair to this discussion. I am asking, no, you don't have to jump in, Faye. You have to listen to the statistics. Forget the chartered accountants.
But you're lying to my audience, Mr. Reddy. How can I not jump in?
And let us ask these questions to the economists also. My question is, should I not ask these statistics, which are most pertinent and most material for the economy of this country? And these are statistics which are proved. The World Bank takes it up. My question is, when India has gone up from a 1.6 billion economy to a 2.5 billion economy from 2014 to 2019, why can't you address that issue in your letter?
Because it's not
by
an issue.
108 renowned and eminent economists. Second, when India's collection of taxes has jumped from 8 lakh crore to 15 lakh crore, doubled from 2014 to 2015. Where is India earning this money? How is the government earning so much of taxes?
I don't know. You're earning taxes. We're not making any money, Mr. Vivek Reddy. Most people will tell you they're losing jobs at this point, and our offices have not given us raises for a while.
And most basic, why did you suppress that? Why did you evade it?
Okay.
Faye, now, please don't disturb me. I'm asking
No, but you're lying to my audience, Mr. Reddy. I have to stop you.
Evade these compelling facts.
Okay,
It is so evident. This is not a lie. 1.6 billion economy to 2.6 billion.
All right. Then allow them to answer. First of all, Mr. Reddy, you've started all of this, but before I go to the economist to respond to you, Mr. Reddy, can you hear me? Can he hear me? He's ranting on his own.
During elections, and the letter of
Mr. Reddy, why is the farmer suicide data being withheld? You promised me you'd answer that question.
That takes away their argument. And
why
let them read that.
is the farmer suicide data been withheld since demonetisation?
The government is not hiding any facts. The government will release. It is collecting data from all the state governments.
After 1 month, we'll go into elections. When will you release it then?
Collect these facts. All the state governments will have to report this.
Mr. Reddy, I'm going to make one more attempt to ask you this question, after which I will move to the rest of my panelists.
It is the state government that has it.
Mr. Reddy, can you hear me? This is a sound check for Mr. Reddy. Can he hear me? He obviously cannot.
Of the state governments. The government has to collect data. They've asked them.
Okay. Why is it the government of India has not released this farmer suicide data after demonetisation? This was data that was released on an annual basis.
I told you just now.
What is it?
I told you just now, this data is being collected from all the state governments. It is the state governments which are the nodal agencies. They are the ones who have the employees who will collect this data. Many of the state governments have not transmitted this data. Some of the state governments have transmitted.
How is it coming? They couldn't use speed post. If they'd used speed post, it would have reached by now.
The number of deaths. It is the state
You are suppressing the data because it's not convenient. Mr. Reddy thinks we are all laddus.
Please ask the state governments.
Okay.
Please have a debate. I will give you statistics of the state governments which have not reported. I will give you statistics.
All right, let me point out to you that
please
the
don't
NCRB...
blame the central government. I'm asking this fundamental question. Are these economies avoiding true facts?
All right, are you done asking questions? Would you allow me to ask questions now? All right, I just want to point out to our audience that the data... Okay, cut his mic. The data that we are actually showing on screen and the data that we're talking about was released on an annual basis by various ministries of government, and a lot of that data just hasn't come. So you can see it on your screen right now. Hasn't been released since 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015 in some cases, and that will continue to run on your screen. But let's attempt to get answers to the questions raised by Vivek Reddy. Professor Ramkumar, here's the question. Are you suppressing data and not acknowledging what the World Bank said in your letter when you drafted it?
No, not at all. Let me just answer some of the pointed questions that have been raised here.
Yes, please.
We are collecting data on farmer suicides from the states. That's completely wrong, because every state police headquarters has a statistics department,
yes,
which collects farmer suicide data through the FIRs that have been filed in police stations.
Yes.
That has been sent to the center, or in some states they don't send to the center. It's true, because in such cases the data have been reported as zero in the earlier NCRB reports. Those states who did not send the reports, their data has been reported as zero.
Yes.
That's been the
so the NCRB actually puts a state-wise breakup.
State-wise breakup.
And if
of
the state has
suicides.
not given, it will just say zero.
Zero
Yes.
or a dash.
Yes.
Whatever it is. So that has been the system in the past. Now coming to the second, that's very clearly not the question of states not sending data. Even if the states did not send the data, it has been released in the past on time.
Yes.
Now, number one. Number two, the methodology of the employment surveys have changed from 2011-12 and 2017-18. That's also completely untrue. What determines the methodology? What determines the comparability? Are the same concepts followed? Are the same definitions followed? Is the same sampling framework followed? Is the way in which sample is drawn followed exactly the same? And is the way in which data is collected from the ground by investigators the same? All are the same. The only difference between 2011-12 and 2017-18, Dr. Mohanan has clarified earlier in another few days back, it is that an additional repeat visits to urban households have been added to the survey framework. Now, that does not in any way change the comparability of 2011-12 and 2017-18. Now, the other point that has been the spokesperson did not raise it, but others in his party and Niti Aayog have raised it, which is that the sample size has come down from 2011-12 and 2017-18. It has come down, but it is still adequate to draw a result. 55,000 households have been surveyed. So there is no change in the concepts, definitions, framework between 2011-12 and 2017-18. They are perfectly comparable.
And let me also bring in Professor Khera, because you signed on this letter. Have you ignored the World Bank's data on the fact that India is the fastest growing economy, not taken that into consideration when you wrote this letter?
I think the issue is not just of the growth rate, it's the divergence in the estimates that even the government is putting out. One time you get a certain growth rate, another time you get another growth rate. At some times they put up some data on their website, then they take it down. That's where the concern lies. See, it's not as if we're going to feel happy if the growth rate is lower. We're obviously going to feel happy if the growth rate is higher, right? All we want is that the sanctity of the data, which was in any case in danger, has always been a matter of politicking. It seems to have reached another level in the past few years. I mean, I certainly don't recall, and I may be wrong, but I don't recall members of the Planning Commission, of the Statistical Commission having to resign their post because they're so fed up with, you know, and he said in his article that basically there was no respect for their work and they felt redundant there. So I think that really is the issue, and it would be good to get into the nitty-gritties of these issues rather than just having to fob off these charges of being politically motivated.
Yes. I'm also going to give an opportunity to Professor Arun Kumar to respond. You've had your hand up, and I can see Ajay Dua as well. Professor Kumar, very quickly, do you want to respond to Vivek Reddy?
Yeah. So Vivek Reddy said that the tax collection has gone up. You know, this is always the case, because as inflation takes place and as output rises, the tax collection rises. The question is, what has happened to the tax GDP ratio? The tax GDP ratio has not changed. Even though the direct tax GDP ratio has risen by about 0.6%, but the indirect tax GDP ratio has come down, so that has not risen. So that shows that the growth rate cannot be measured based on the direct tax GDP ratio or the indirect tax GDP ratio. Second point is that the World Bank does not collect independent data. The World Bank only takes the government data. Now the government says that we don't have data, or if the government says we will not release the data, or the government says nobody has reliable data, then the World Bank would also have to conclude that. So in other words, when the government says we don't have data on employment and unemployment, and therefore unorganized sector data is not reliable and not available, then the GDP data is not reliable, and the World Bank would end up having to say that that's also the case, that, you know, this data is not reliable. So my argument is after demonetization, the unorganized sector declined because of the shock and the GST added to the shock. So the rate of growth of the economy is less than 1%. It's not 7% because the unorganized sector is declining. And that the government says we don't have data on. If it doesn't have data on unorganized sector, it means it's only dependent on the organized sector data. And the organized sector may be growing at 7%,
why we
but
beat
the unorganized sector data
France
is not
to
there.
become the sixth largest in the world.
That is declining according to surveys by CMIE, by others, So therefore, all other data shows the CMIE, whether it be the Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce,
my question is, why didn't you address this in your letter?
Organization, they are showing that the
why did you
unorganized sector is
suppress these
declining.
facts?
And therefore, the rate of growth is not 7% but 1%.
Well, very well said. In fact, I unfortunately believe that Vivek Reddy has not, while he questions the questions, he hasn't answered any of the questions that we have asked. At the end of the day, what the economists are all saying is very clear. None of the indicators around us, so basically how much money are we saving, and that number is available with the RBI, they release it every year. If you're not making any money, you're not saving any money, it won't show up in household savings. How many jobs are we actually creating? How many we've lost? That number is available. And there is data that has been relied on for the last 40 years. To turn around now, today, before an election and say, this data has been wrongly calculated from a very respected organization within the government that has been telling various government what's what for the last 40 years is not okay. To withhold data that is not convenient at this point. But how many farmers have killed themselves in the last couple of years is not okay. There are two things we have to be worried about. In the global community, countries that tamper with their own data suffer when it comes to receiving investments from the world. And secondly, all government decisions are made based on data like this. If there's no data, you're either not making decisions or you're making wrong decisions and you're shooting in the dark. And that's not good for anybody either. We understand that there is an election coming up, but that shouldn't in any way stand in the way of the normal course of business. And it will not in any way stop us from asking questions, because that is our job. And that is our right. Remember, viewers, the people who ask questions, whether economists or journalists, are the real chowkidars. Thanks for watching.